So producing tennis champions in Scotland. Basically, you just buy kids a swing ball and let them get on with it. This is my kids age 2 and 3 on the beach with swing ball. And every time I show this picture, they say to me, "Oh, Mum, for God's sake, you used to dress us in such terrible clothes." But basically, from when they were very young, Jamie and Andy tried pretty much every sport under the sun, bar skiing. And they had parents and grandparents who were more than happy to play actively with them whenever or wherever they wanted to. So they grew up developing pretty exceptional hand-eye and foot-eye coordination skills. So it wouldn't have mattered which sports they wanted to try when they were older. They would have been pretty competent at it, because coordination skills, as you probably know, are what underpin really all physical activity. And we lived about 500 metres from the tennis club in Dunblane. Very important to have access to a local community facility. And that was where I started out coaching when the boys were toddlers. So for any of you who thought that I've always been a tennis coach and that I brought my children up to be tennis players, you're wrong. I was a sales rep when my kids were born. And when just before Andy was born, we moved back from Glasgow to Dunblane to be closer to my family. And that was when I started to volunteer at our local tennis club, which was the tennis club that I'd grown up in. It was really from there that I kind of started helping some of the older boys, mostly. There weren't so many girls around at the time. And I realized that there was very little coaching and very little competition going on in the local area. I wasn't a coach, but I had been a player, so I was able to teach them about playing the game, which is very different from hitting the ball. Hitting the ball is more technical coaching. Playing the game is more tactical and using your brain, which was the way that I was taught. Because when I was growing up in Scotland, we had no indoor facilities and we had no coaches, so you played tennis in the summer, played badminton in the winter. I played for Scotland at badminton as well as a junior, but there weren't coaches. I learned how to play the game by playing the game with my parents, first of all, then with other kids at the club, and then with adults. So the way that I started teaching was very much to teach kids how to compete and how to make things difficult for an opponent. And as some of the kids at Dunblane Tennis Club got better and better, I started to upgrade the elementary qualification that I'd taken as a student in order to earn some pocket money. It had kind of worn out. And I upgraded the qualifications twice. And I finished off in 1994. I did a year-long course, which was mostly down south. And with 2 kids aged 6 and 7, it was quite a big commitment for me. But I realized that if I was serious about trying to help these kids to get better, then I needed to upskill. So I took the course. I passed it, I think, because I was clever. It was a lot of projects, a lot of project work. It wasn't because I was a skilled coach, because at the end of the course, what I realized was it gave me a lot of knowledge and information, but no real way of how do you practically apply that information to young people and kids in particular. Having passed that course, I was encouraged to apply for the national coach position, and I had absolutely no business to be the national coach. I had no experience at all. I was just somebody who had a lot of enthusiasm and a real passion for my sport. But the position had been vacant for 18 months. I don't think anybody else wanted it. So they gave it to me, and it might sound like it's quite a high-powered thing to be the national coach of tennis in Scotland, but back then we had no indoor facilities, we had no performance program, we had no track record of success, and we had no coaches. Because if you think about it, if you don't have indoor coach, you can't play 12 months of the year, so nobody really takes that on as a career. So I started out pretty much with a blank canvas, and I was very fortunate that just after I took the job on, the first indoor centre in Scotland opened at Stirling University, which is 5 miles from my home. I really believe that if that centre hadn't been there, my children would not have become the tennis players that they became, and it goes back to this local facilities. So I started out on a £25,000 salary. I had a £90,000 budget and no staff and 1 centre, 4 indoor courts for the whole country. In some ways it was good because you have very little resources and you try and max out on what you've got. Plus you've got a blank canvas, so you can pretty much do what you like. I have to say I'm not convinced I really knew what I was doing, but I wanted to try and put things in place to give Scottish kids the opportunity to progress. Because when I was a junior, in my last year of juniors, I was ranked number 8 in Britain, and the top 6 girls were given a chance to train full-time at Queen's Club as part of an all-girls squad with a British setup. So the difference of being a couple of places higher, I would have got everything that I dreamed of, a chance to try to become a tennis player, to getting absolutely nothing, because in Scotland there wasn't anything. So I think a lot of my drive to create opportunities for Scottish kids came from the fact that there were no opportunities when I was a junior. Starting out, I thought, right, okay, I can't start with loads and loads of kids. I went around the country and I identified 20 children aged between 7 and 11. Andy was probably the youngest one, and Elena Baltasha was probably the oldest one. And put together what we called a national development school, which also sounds quite grand, but basically it was weekend activity, because that was the only way that we could bring all of the children together, because a lot of them travelled from long distances to get there. It evolved further down the line as we added centres and we added coaches into more individualised programmes, which obviously bore fruit further down the line. But of those 20 children that I started with, 4 of them went on to become Davis Cup players, which is Great Britain men's team. 1 played Fed Cup, British women's team. 2 won Grand Slam titles. 1 won Olympic gold and silver. Another one won Commonwealth Games gold in mixed doubles. And 1 made top 50 of the women's world rankings. Also realised that, as I was starting out, I was going to have to grow a workforce to help me. And I managed to get £10,000 from Sports Scotland for a performance coach development programme. And I used that money to bring people in from other countries to help me to learn, but also to help 6 other coaches to learn as well. So we did everything from bringing in the technical director of Belgian tennis 3 times a year for 3 days to help us to plan the technical development of the young kids, physical trainers, mental skills, practical mental skills people, video analysts, basically everything that I felt that we needed to learn. And not all at the same time. Obviously the money doesn't go very far, but of those 6 coaches, 1 is now the head coach of British wheelchair tennis. 1 is one of the top coach educators in the UK. 1 is one of the best skill developers in kids aged 10 to 14 in the UK. 1 runs the scholarship programme at Stirling University. And the other one is currently the men's Davis Cup captain and head of men's tennis at the LTA. So we kind of got a double whammy out of starting with pretty much nothing. Several years later, we're in quite a strong position in terms of the coaches that we have and also the players that we have. But there were so many things that I needed to learn. I obviously had to learn how to coach at all the different levels. But when you're playing in junior tennis, there is no prize money. You're just paying out all the time. And when you exhaust the competition in your local area and you have to go down south, that's expensive. Travel, overnight stays, entry fees, food, physio, maybe sometimes, restrings, etc., etc. It's an incredibly expensive sport. And when you then have to go overseas, it becomes even more expensive. So in 2004, when Andy won US Open Juniors, I hoped that Sports Scotland would give us more funding. They didn't. They said, we're not interested in junior Grand Slam champions. We're only interested in Grand Slam champions. I thought, oh, good, cart before the horse. But it was clear to me that they didn't understand our sport at all, and obviously had no belief that these players that we had 3 players in US Open Juniors that year, could go on to become full-time players. So I resigned and I took it on myself. I decided to try and dedicate myself, I guess, to helping my kids to do the best that they possibly can. So I borrowed money, I learned to do all sorts of things so I didn't have to pay other people, massage, did a PR course, learned how to build a website. I had to learn to manage the life and business of a full-time athlete. Obviously, the results have borne fruit, as you know. They're a little bit bigger now, and they still don't play with the swing ball. But what I realise is that we created something from a non-tennis nation, from pretty much nothing. But your role models are one thing, and it's created enormous buzz and excitement about tennis in this country, but you're only as good as your grassroots. And in the last 5 or 6 years, while Andy and Jamie have been at the top of the game, we really haven't been able to capitalise. So what I've done is I've got a van, and the top coach educator guy that I mentored all those years ago, the two of us fill it out with equipment, and we're taking it around Scotland to places where there is either no activity or very little tennis activity, but where there is a will in the local community to really grow the game. And we train up teachers, students, active schools coordinators, parents, volunteers, anybody who wants to learn how to deliver starter tennis in community halls, sports halls, parks, tennis centres. So it doesn't require a tennis court to get kids started. It's all about the passion and the enthusiasm. There she is, expert at balloon tennis. And 3.5 years ago, I got the opportunity to captain the British women's team, not something I ever would have imagined I'd get the chance to do. So I had to start learning all about girls' tennis. It's the same in some ways, but in other ways it isn't. They like to get dressed up. They like doing their nails, all that kind of thing. They sulk at things that the boys don't sulk about. It's, you say, we're going to work on your backhand today. What's wrong with my backhand? I didn't say anything was wrong with your backhand. Girls are different from boys. However, sense of belonging, fun, team building, all the things that I love about my sport, plus the tactical side. So I've really enjoyed that. And being competitive, I started to look at how do we win this Fed Cup? Well, we ain't winning that Fed Cup anytime soon. You need a top 5 player, probably a backup player of 10 to 20, and a double specialist. We don't have any of them. So I then started to drill down through the age groups and see what talent was coming through. The answer was not very much in terms of number or of quality. And when I looked at the girls coming into the game, the issue was really that tennis is not attractive to little girls. We're competing with so many other things that little girls like. So I looked at what they like: nail stickers, music, dance, animated characters, and I created this little program called the Miss Hits. There are 6 Miss Hits, and they each represent a tennis stroke. So we got Faith Forehand in there. She's the one in blue, sitting down at the front with the red hair and freckles. Favourite player's Andy Murray, of course it is. Favourite tournament is Wimbledon. What's Wimbledon? Little kids have no idea, usually. That's what you play on grass, like playing in your back garden. And Billy the Bulldog in there as well. And we're training up a workforce to deliver it. And it's a 12-week fun starter program delivered indoors so they don't get cold and they don't get wet. They create a social group. They work with slow-moving, brightly coloured equipment. It's like going to a party. So they develop the coordination skills that you need for tennis, because our sport is actually a very complex coordination sport, and it's a difficult one for little kids to learn. So they're in a fun, safe environment. They work with female coaches, which they generally are much more comfortable with, and there's no boys anywhere. So we've trained up 200 coaches already, 45 of them in Scotland. Aim is to grow the game and to grow the female coaches network. And finally, I'm absolutely determined that there will be a legacy from what Jamie and Andy have achieved in Scotland, and I feel very much better that I'm doing something about it myself in terms of the Tennis on the Road programme that we're taking out there. My feeling is that they can get on with what they're getting on with, all over the world, and keeping the profile and the interest high. And I can share everything that I've learned in 25 years of coaching, from complete beginner level all the way up to the top of the game. And that's not just the coaching, it's the life and business of being a full-time athlete. And there are many, many things to learn within that. And my final project is, hopefully, if we get the planning permission, a tennis and golf centre, a pay-and-play centre, totally family orientated, have an activity park, cycle routes, woodland, so that it will give me a base to work from, so that I can share everything that I've learned, and I can build a workforce for the future, so that we're not looking back in 20 years and going, Andy who? Thank you very much.